Good afternoon. So what I'd like to do is to start off by making a prediction. I might nestle within it a bit of a challenge for us insurtech companies. I'd like to pivot from there to a question that I'll throw out there, and then park it, tell you a little bit about how we at Lemonade think about the challenges that face us. I'd like to indoctrinate you into some of our thinking, share with you some of our experiences, and then perhaps come full circle towards the end and try and answer or give you my answer to the question that I'm going to be posing. So I said I'm going to start off with a prediction. The brands that dominate today dominated during the era of the horse-drawn carriage. There's been tremendous longevity, and the question, or the prediction I'm going to make, if you like, is whether those same brands are going to dominate a generation from now. Are we the last people to be able to say the sentence that I did, that the brands that dominate today dominated during the era of the horse-drawn carriage? And I think the odds are that yes, we are. I think that what we're going to be experiencing in the coming years is a significant changing of the guards. And I'd like to add a bit of color to that. But my prediction is that the brands of tomorrow already exist. They may have already presented on this stage. And that we're going to see a very significant, perhaps not sudden, but very significant shift. And I'll try and come back to this theme at the end, but the underlying reason that I say that is that the assets that insurance companies have built up over these last 100+ years are now revealing themselves to be liabilities. Whether it's their brand, whether it's the distribution methodology, whether it's the IT stack, whether it's the corporate culture, all of these have served them so very well, but the tides are changing. And I think the companies of tomorrow are going to be natively digital. They're going to be created on a substrate that is data by its very foundation. And as I put it playfully, they'll be staffed by bots, not brokers, by AI, not by actuaries. And I think that this is a bit of a challenge to some of the insurtechs, ourselves included, which is to go for gold, to look at the big prize, not simply to sell tools to existing companies, but to look at the fact that companies that succeed in this place, that become the brands of tomorrow, perhaps have the promise of 100 or 200 years of dominance and very, very sizable business. How will this play out? What shape will it take? I like to phrase this as a question of, are we facing a Wikipedia moment? So Encyclopedia Britannica started in the 1700s, roughly the same time in the same place as Lloyd's of London. And they both did very well under trying circumstances. They weathered the Napoleonic Wars and the Revolutionary Wars and 2 world wars and the Spanish flu. Until in 2010, Britannica encountered a website. And that was just too much. And Britannica folded, and it, of course, doesn't exist anymore. Britannica brought out 15 editions over its 2.5 centuries. Wikipedia updates 10 times a second. It has 30 times more content just in English, not to mention all the other languages. And it doesn't cost $1,000. It's absolutely free, and it's searchable and pocketable, and its advantages are very clear. And the question that I'll leave hovering out there as I meander through the journey of Lemonade a bit is our industry, is the insurance industry facing its own Wikipedia moment? I'll let that one linger, and I'll switch gears for a minute. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about how, as I say, I want to indoctrinate you a little bit into how we think about the challenges that we face as an industry, and then a little bit about how we are trying to solve them and how those attempts have been received during our short time in the market. And this is something that we haven't spoken about much, policies per human or policies per employee. One of the things that we're finding incredibly powerful and we're tracking pretty religiously is how much we're able to scale the model. How much are we able to use technology instead of people? And in our company, as with many insurtech companies or startup companies in general, technology is not a cost center. It is the company. And when the folks in finance say to me, Daniel, we need another hire in finance because there's a lot of regulatory filings, my answer invariably is, do you need a person in finance or do we need another engineer? And when support says, hey, we're shorthanded, we need another people in support, I say, do we need another support professional or do we need another engineer? And I'll tell you that 9 times out of 10, the answer is we need another engineer. Because regulatory filings of financial reports can be done by bots. Support can be done by bots. Adding jewelry or changing coverage can be done either by the consumer or by bots. And as soon as you think of technology as the core of the company, not a cost center that's building a website for your product, it is truly transformative. What we're seeing already is that we now have about 1,200 policies or customers for every one employee that we have. So 70,000 customers or policyholders, less than 60 employees. We think we're going to get to 10,000. My understanding, and we haven't done an exhaustive survey, we just sampled a few of the largest insurance companies. I think the number today is already better than most of the large insurance companies, and the trajectory is pretty compelling. And we're using bots in ways that may be less obvious than just looking at our website. So when you onboard with us, Maya, our bot, asks you if you have an existing insurance policy. Maya then cancels the policy for you. Now, that isn't just a front-end form that generates a task for somebody in the back end to do. Actually, no human being does it. Our systems have a database of different insurance companies, how they like to receive cancellations, to what address, what fax machine invariably. And Maya produces the letter, sends it off, and no human beings are involved. And the list goes on how we're able to use AI and bots in our back office functions, not only in our consumer-facing ones. We launched an API a couple of weeks ago. The idea that you can teach a bot to talk to a human is cool. Their native tongue is machine, and they love talking to other bots. And if you can get insurance in 90 seconds when talking to a human, you can do it in 90 milliseconds when you're talking to another machine. So we think a lot of the future is going to go through APIs. Once you're able to generate bindable quotes algorithmically, allowing a machine to talk to a machine and becoming embedded not only on our website and our app, but on a gazillion websites and a gazillion apps is an incredibly powerful thing, and again, bespeaks of scalability. And finally, I think that this kind of an architecture and a digital, natively digital company allows for transformation deep in the insurance product itself. So a few weeks ago, we launched our first foray into this, and this really is just the tip of the iceberg. We launched something that we call Zero Everything. So it costs you a little bit more. You can opt for this when you buy our policy, but you can have zero deductible, full replacement value, and zero rate hikes if you make a claim. You claim that $1,000 laptop. Today, with most insurance policies, you'll end up getting $300 by the time you're done away with the deductibles and the rate hikes and everything else. And you may say to hell with it, and you'll feel cheated and tremendous animosity. And in fact, most fraud in insurance equals the amount of the deductible. So you think you're gaining a lot by adding the deductible. It ends up getting netted out by the fraud oftentimes. But in part, the deductible is there to deal with the fact that claims are so expensive to handle. Small claims are known as nuisance claims. And they're known for that because it cost me $500 to pay you that $500 claim. And therefore, I want to really do away with these small claims. Well, when you've got somebody like AI Jim, our bot, he loves small claims. He doesn't know how to deal with a house that burned to the ground. But your laptop was stolen, he'll deal with that at zero LAE. The LAE in the US in our sector runs between 10 and 12%. 10 to 12% on the dollar in the US goes for the bureaucracy of claims. But the high-frequency, low-severity claims can be handled by bots with tremendous alacrity, and that enables us to start to introduce new kinds of insurance products because those fundamental changes in the economics can drive fundamental changes in the type of coverage, the type of policy, the type of value proposition. And with that, I come back to my opening question. Are we facing a Wikipedia moment in insurance? And frankly, my answer is no. I think that you're not going to see the sudden collapse of any major insurance companies. If you do, it would be a surprise to me. I don't expect this to be a repeat of what happened to Encyclopedia Britannica. But I do think the industry is facing an Amazon moment. So in 1999, Barron's had the cover that said that the idea that Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos has pioneered a new business paradigm is silly. He's just another middleman, and the stock market is beginning to catch on to that. Well, hindsight is a wonderful thing. They were right for a while. When they wrote that article, Amazon stock price was at 62. 2 years to the day later, it was down at 14. So it had lost 80% of its value over the following 2 years. They must have felt pretty smart. They were able to predict that this was a bubble. But of course, we know the story. It's grown 80x since then. And I think the message and the metaphor, the analogy to insurance isn't perfect, but it is telling. The large retailers know this is coming, right? They see it. They gather in conferences such as this. They create innovation departments. They acquire tech startups, and they all create websites with e-commerce. What are they doing wrong? Walmart, huge purchases. Why is it that the shift in value has been so, not sudden, it's 20 years in the making, but so dramatic? And you see that with every cycle that turns, it becomes more and more of a runaway success. And I put it to you that this is very similar to the insurance situation, where the assets become liabilities. So it may be true that retailers created websites and engaged in e-commerce early, but they still had this albatross around their neck of the old culture, the old installations, the old rent agreements that they had, the obligation, the quarterly results that they still had to meet. So they had the classic innovator's dilemma. And it is almost unprecedented for a company to cannibalize itself, even if it sees the tide coming. That Kodak moment where digital film comes along, Kodak saw that coming. I spent many years at SanDisk, and I used to call that the Kodak moment of the company because it really displaced chemical film. The execs at Kodak saw it coming, but it doesn't matter if you see it coming. Affecting that deeper change and jettisoning everything that you've built over the last 100 years in order to jump ship to a new paradigm is almost unprecedented, almost never ever happens. Might it happen in insurance? Yeah. Conferences like this might just affect change. But I put it to you that if it does, it will be the first time in the history of the world that it has. That wraps my presentation. I really thank you for your attention. Have a great day.